Welcome back to Selling Circular, the podcast dedicated to exploring the innovative minds and business models shaping our transition to a circular economy. My name is Gar Punnett, CEO of LoopLayer. Sabir Lakhani not joining me for this intro, although you'll hear her for the interview segment of this episode. Too often we say that we are diving into an episode or diving into a topic, but this time I actually do look forward to literally diving into one of the most innovative solutions to solve our plastic crisis. So this episode, we are diving into an unexpected source of this solution, which is the ocean itself. Our guest today is Julia Marsh, co-founder of Sway, a company that's pioneering the use of seaweed to create packaging that can replace traditional packages and plastics. But this doesn't just mean a green alternative type of story. Julia brings a unique perspective to our conversation as someone who grew up surrounded by seaweed in California's Monterey Bay area, but eventually really channeling that love of the ocean and that childhood connection into a mission to revolutionize how we think about how we package everyday products. What makes this conversation particularly compelling is Julia's approach to the problem, but rather focusing on what we're fighting against, the mountains of plastics, obviously, in terms of pollution. She's actually really wants us to focus on how we envision what we're fighting for. Oceans brimming with life, thriving communities, and regenerative systems that actually improve our planet as they grow. So whether you're interested in sustainable business, ocean innovation, or just curious about that seaweed-based bag that you might have been carrying out of some sort of grocery store or local retailer, this conversation offers those practical insights and an inspiring vision for that material future. Let's dive in.
Julia, we got to meet each other already at Circularity, which is cool. And we got, I guess, like a sneak peek of what this episode might be. But I wanted to start with the raw material that you focus on, seaweed, and talk to us about like the beauty of the material and the reason for focusing on it as a source material and alternative to plastic.
Thank you. Lovely question. Very happy to be here. Love Circularity, favorite circular economy event that happens all year, every year. I think oftentimes the narrative around plastics centers on the scale of the problem and what we're fighting against as relates to pollution. And at Sway, we're very focused on what are we fighting for. And what I envision true solutions for plastics enable is like oceans brimming with life and really healthy communities and really healthy soils and like the vision of a thriving planet. So the reason that we like to work with seaweed is it helps enable that beautiful regenerative future. It's the most abundant, generous marine material on Earth. There are 10,000 plus different species of seaweed. They don't need fresh water to grow. Don't need pesticides, grow really fast, like 20 to 30 times faster than corn or sugarcane. So it's a very resource efficient, fast growing crop that can be responsibly farmed. But then on top of that, it's doing a lot of good for the ocean as it grows. It's creating habitat, it's creating oxygen, it's providing food, it can be an ecosystem architect, it's sequestering carbon. So there's all this goodness just baked into the material. And yeah, by working with seaweed, you can't divorce that goodness from the final product.
So in that relationship, and I love that answer of it's very much, it tracks so much with look toward the future, be hopeful, try to build something, not be reactive to anything negative, but try to come up with a solution. Where does that, I mean, how did you get obsessed? Where did it hit? What was the seaweed aha moment where you're like, oh, what if this is the answer? Like, where did that come into the process of, and we can get to wherever it maybe was as in an academic journey or a professional journey. I think I would love that answer because it's a very particular solution, very particular plant. What was that moment for you?
I grew up in the Monterey Bay area in California, which is famous for the Monterey Bay Aquarium. So as the daughter of an amateur fisherman and with family members who actually worked at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, I had a disproportionately high amount of seaweed in my childhood.
That makes more sense. Yes.
We should be asking everyone, what was your seaweed aha moment?
Yes, we should.
If you look back at photos of me or my sister as children, seaweed is like always in the background, and it feels like it's been following me
love
my
that.
whole life. So this was inevitable.
That makes total sense now. I mean, that's very similar to me jumping into trash cans in an urban environment. That's
Yeah.
just my
It's always
spawning
been
ground.
there.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Always been there.
But the aha moment was two things. One, it was an obsession with the circular economy, and the third pillar, which says let's regenerate nature. What are the abundant materials that can actively improve ecosystems? And seaweed just checks all the boxes.
Yeah.
And then the second is what material has the physical or, the performance qualities that are plastic-like that could realistically replace a good chunk of plastics. And seaweed has plastic-like qualities. If you pick up a piece of seaweed on the beach and stretch it, you'll be able to tell that it has this natural gelling property. And we're able to use that same gelling quality of seaweed from seaweed to create replacements for plastic. And that realization really happened when I was in grad school, studying alternatives for plastic and thinking about systems change and how you actually help carve out a part of the plastic problem, not solve the whole thing, but carve out a part through the lens of design.
Well, that's a really interesting concluding word, because where my mind was going when you opened is saying, you said, right, like, what are you fighting for versus against? I think that that's like a beautiful way, an outlook to help like drive a mission. And also, the reality is you have to counter position to plastic, and naturally have to fight plastic, because that's really what you're trying to take market share from. And I think my observation from like looking at the website and from talking to you, the brand and design itself is so like nature based and modern, but also has like kind of like a hippie, like polished hippie quality, right? And it's like beautiful and crisp, and I think does a good job of counter positioning to plastic. So I guess what I'm curious about is like, how did you arrive there, and what do you think that you do well that helps you win against plastic?
That's so kind. Thank you. I'm a graphic designer by trade and did my master's in design for both brand identity as well as packaging design. So really actually entered the development of Sway more through the lens of brand than through the lens of material science, which is an interesting entry point because it allows you to have the viewpoint of an outsider. I think observationally, much of the plastics industry has made legacy design choices that are less inviting or joyful and are intended for a very like corporate audience, which makes sense. But today, people care about materials more than ever. There's way more awareness around the impacts of plastics, in particular microplastics and petroleum, given the whole conversation around climate. And so people need to feel like they can have relationships with the people making the things that we interface with every day. And certainly like the more conventional interpretation would be, I'd like to know who's making the fabric that I'm putting on my body, or I would like to know who's growing the apple that I'm putting in my body. But I think it can extend to packaging too. So yeah, it's about like inviting people to feel like they can be a part of the conversation. And it also helps lift the veil on kind of the ambiguity of like, where does packaging come from? You don't know like who's making your plastic bag usually.
Well, I mean, I think that's a great point toward a growing consumer consciousness. And I think that ultimately is what you're trying to serve. You're trying to sell to brands. And we'll get into that sales process because I'm going to paint a broad brush here with how that sales process goes. But you're trying to communicate that towards your buying audience as well as that consuming audience, so that when they see that brand, when they see that name of Sway, they get to go and say, oh, I actually am proud to be attached to this brand, not just some sort of vague beige commercial entity that is just pumping out product to serve some sort of market need. I mean, there may be a really obvious answer here, but I'll go through this question anyway, which is why, for an abundant material, for something that has so many net positives. Why haven't we done this sooner?
It's fairly challenging to make seaweed melt. Seaweed comes from the ocean. It doesn't want to work in a system designed for thermoplastic. So that's one piece.
Okay. So actual technology
Yeah.
development. Okay, got
And
it.
that's part of what makes Sway so special, although we're a part of a much larger wave of innovation that's happening with marine materials right now. So one piece is technological advancement, but I would say, there's many theories as to why. One is
We're here for 'em.
we've been working with seaweed in lots of other industries in a much larger capacity for decades. Seaweed is in your cosmetics, it's in your food, it's a thickening agent used in ice cream and coffee. It can stabilize like beer foam. Agar petri dishes are made with seaweed. So seaweed's like already in everyday products.
Okay.
But it hasn't been extended to plastics. And that's probably because of cost, in addition to technological advancement. But I think a third reason is when we think about innovation, we typically look to the land. It's like what's readily available to us, where what's a waste product of a highly optimized system like the fossil fuel industry. So I think that's the reason that in the bioplastics journey, we looked to trees and we looked to corn and maybe sugarcane first, because it's literally above the ground. That's my theory.
I love that land bias. That's like, as land mammals, somehow we're just like more just, that's such an interesting, probably a percentage of that reason for sure.
But we live on a blue planet. So I'm really pleased to see that on a planet that's mostly the ocean, there's an increasing rise. There is an immense rise in ocean innovation as a source of energy, food, housing materials, the way that we dress, and what we package everyday items in. And Sway is just one company in a larger tide that's shifting towards
Love it.
ocean innovation.
Well, that makes me wonder about how you capitalize the business and the research and innovation. It looks like you have multiple lines, product lines, which have maybe required, and maybe you can talk us through like the different technologies required to manufacture those lines. And so in order to do that, you've had to invest in material innovation. You or the system has to, and then that cost gets passed along to the end consumer. And so, as a growing business, how have you thought through managing that innovation process along with trying to like find customers and be profitable? Or what does that like financial journey look like?
From the beginning, our vision was to design for the systems that already exist. And that would be our path to being able to offer a material that is affordable or compares to the alternatives that are already in the market. And that's the real innovation, is make seaweed melt on the systems that already exist, create a material that performs and functions in that system. And then ultimately you unlock replicability and scalability, which has real appeal to venture capital as well as to our customers, which are actually packaging distributors. So we raised capital in 2021 as well as in 2023, support development, went through hundreds of iterations of our formula, built out a lab, expanded our team, and now we're in the commercialization journey for multiple products that we're selling to packaging distributors. And we're doing all of that without having to invest in in-house equipment. We get to just work with traditional plastic manufacturers who are already operating at scale and have functionally no limit to their capacity. So complex question, complex answer, but the vision really is work with legacy industry and allow that to be the vector to being able to siphon new technologies quickly out of the lab and into the hands of packaging distributors who service thousands of customers across all industries.
Double clicking on that then for a more complex answer. Help me understand. I mean, I was trying to do a little bit of the research into the business ecosystem that is packaging. That tidbit of where you're saying, well, our customers, the distributors, can you lay this out for our audience a little bit in terms of what you sell to, who they're selling to, and why that is sort of the ecosystem again that is consumer packaging or even just packaging solutions in general?
The plastic industry is extremely well oiled, and it has to be. These plastic manufacturing facilities Sorry, can't resist. But they're so heavily optimized. They're typically running 24/7, 363 and a half days
Yeah.
out of the year.
Right.
It's a commodity business. So in general, plastic manufacturers are producing product that then they're selling into packaging distributors who would be responsible for getting the material printed and converted into different formats. Does it need a handle? Does it need a gusset? Does it like all the kind of
Yeah.
customization? What makes it a finished product happens through the packaging distributor who also operates as the seller. So
Got
we
it.
used to think, and I think there was a trend in startup culture where we said we need to cut out the middleman, but in fact, the
Right.
middleman in
Vertically.
packaging is very, very important.
So they're the ones with the power.
They're the ones with power.
Really?
Mhm.
Okay. Got it. Yeah.
Yeah, for the most part. So plastic manufacturer sells usually rolls of film to packaging distributor who creates the finished product and sells it to the largest companies in the world and the smallest companies in the world. And through them, we can access, I mean, I won't name specific names, but the packaging that you see on the shelf when you shop at Target or when you go to Walmart is being dictated by these packaging distributors. So if those distributors are selling Sway packaging, we functionally get access to all of those customers in the end.
And
That's
so
super helpful.
then do you rely on them? Like they're selling multiple, I guess, plastic formats, or so then is the distributor helping the end customer make the best decision, or how do you also get the end customer to pick seaweed over fossil
I
fuel
love like
packaging?
behavior change wise. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like how are you influenced? Yeah.
The packaging distributors we partner with have mission driven CEOs or presidents typically. So there's someone high up in the organization who believes that we have to shift away from plastic. I think a fair number of those within the plastic industry see the writing on the wall. Not necessarily that they need to shut down their operations, but that they do need to be enablers of a shift towards new materials. A lot of customer demand that, as well as just legislation and all kinds of influences that would cause them to feel that way. So certainly their sales folks can sell whatever they want. However, Sway represents this really unique entry point. It's a differentiator for them to showcase we've got this seaweed thing that no one else has, and it's going to deliver all these benefits to you, and it performs, and it costs about the same. It's kind of like it's a great entry into customer accounts. It's a great way to expand their business. And yeah, I think that the incentive is really to also feel like they're a part of the future and they're modernizing along with the rest of them.
How much room do you think that leaves you still to focus on you all as a company, but then a lot of still advocacy that you need to do for this material and this growth of this side of the industry? How do you balance?
How do we balance developing the technology, but then also shifting the
Yeah.
regulatory landscape?
Yes. I mean we didn't get to the regulatory landscape, but totally. I mean, when we get to regulatory landscape, I've got a couple questions on that. We can get to that. But also just in terms of getting the brand out, because I see that you're at a conference, you're on stage, you're talking so eloquently about this future of which we can be less oil-based plastic and more sort of maybe seaweed or other sort of natural materials based. And that has to have to some impact, again, if we're using Target, not as an official example here, but as a Target buyer then sees that and goes, oh, I need to take this back to my distributor. Is that still such an important role of advocacy in this process?
Totally. Yes.
Okay.
So I really love developing relationships with the brands because they will be heralding the message of seaweed and of compost. They're the ones who become the vector for our message. Personally just love storytelling. I love engaging with the broader community, with brands, with manufacturers, with nonprofits, with research organizations, with academics. Like we have a broad partner network that both informs our research, but then also can be the avenue for getting the message out about what we're doing. And part of that's important so that, we get customer visibility and people are excited to work with us. But it's also about the general, people need to know that alternative materials exist so that when they open a package and it's wrapped in soy materials, they trust it or they understand it
Yeah,
or they
right.
place value on it. There's so much noise that will continue to be the case. It's really hard to distinguish even, is this recyclable? Is it compostable? Where does it go? So like the more recognition, excitement, enthusiasm we can build around our product, the better for our customer relationships, but also just our overall impact.
I mean, I think that's always a fascinating line that whenever we talk to founders, mostly, or even just advocates of certain procurement or policy, or that it's that relationship to how much time do you invest
Mhm.
in the thing that you're trying to do versus talking about the thing you're doing. And it's just that tricky equation. And sometimes it can overweight in one way or the other. And that tip of the scales can be detrimental to some sort of progress. And so it's balancing that out is just something that I know we all have to be hyper conscious of. And so it's always fascinating to get someone's perspective. So thank you.
Thank you. It's seasons. I think the season of
Actually,
spring and fall are insane.
that's yeah, you know what? I always feel that, and I guess when you do line it up, it is seasons. Yeah, it
Mhm.
comes around seasonal. Yeah.
Well, and to that point, I mean, we were talking about the regulatory landscape. I guess we know that Europe is way ahead of the US, but what are you seeing that is really like has unlocked change or the threat of X is unlocking change? If we're the average consumer, like what's going on in the background that we might not be aware of that's really going to change the world around us?
EPR is actually coming online and is influencing brand purchasing decisions. Legislation in California, SB 54, will support and probably spread across other states better adoption of compostable materials. So that definitely can help us. There's some challenges and nuance around defining compostable products and what can be accepted or not. So my hope is that probably not within the next 4 years, but perhaps privately, there will be more investment into compost infrastructure. I think a universal, uh, bipartisan reality is that plastics we know factually are dangerous to humans and they are in our bodies and no one likes that. So I think there's buy-in from both sides that could result in helpful policy change sooner than later. However, so far, that's not been the case. So I think really it has to do with, yes, EPR will encourage brands to move towards more responsible materials, but a lot of the change will happen outside the bounds of regulation or that kind of pressure.
I'm particularly interested from a regulatory standpoint when we're starting to get into biodegradability, degradability in general, when it
Mhm.
comes to a marine based product that I'm not as well. I don't know this product, but I'm guessing can degrade in water fairly easily. How do you stop regulators from sort of over indexing its that what could be a great asset to a product and not have that be a barrier to sort of adoption when they go, oh, this breaks down in a certain sort of set of circumstances too easily? Like that seems like could that be a potential liability to a product like this? Or is it an asset and you just need to continue to educate the asset part of that sort of biodegradability?
Oh, I wish that we were even there. I think you're speaking ahead of where legislators are. Right now, we're just at recyclability. That's the common
Got it.
understanding across most of the discussions we're aware of. The investigation into compost and compostable materials is new. We're not even at
Mm,
marine biodegradation, which in general we try to avoid any kind of marketing around that because we really want to
yeah.
discourage people from littering. And while some of our materials do have like a water solubility like end of life avenue for them, not even those materials do we advertise as marine degradable, even though they may
Right. That
technically
would
be. Yeah.
I love that because that again just probably even puts the wrong connotation on
We're all about compost.
consumer
Yeah.
behavior. Yeah,
Yeah, we're
exactly.
all about
Yeah.
compost. And I think the real opportunity there within and I you guys can cut this out if it's too deep, but
Nerd out.
the real advocacy opportunity that we're looking at is the definition of an organic material according to AB 1201, which is within SB 54, which says that according to the National Organics certifying body, compostable materials can't include bioplastics because they're not organic. Even though our
Oh, of
material
course. Yeah.
might decompose faster than a piece of wood or even like a leaf. So we're asking AB 1201 and CalRecycle and those involved in defining this legislation to expand that definition, either remove the organic requirement or expand it to just include certified compostable materials, because it's a really rigorous process to get a compost certification, especially a home compost certification. If it's home compostable, then certainly it's going to decompose in your compost pile. So that's a whole separate thing.
And yeah, I mean, something we've only hear about here and there when it comes to this is going to sound so aggressive. I don't mean this, but sort of the war of solutions where, there are people out there that have really strong thoughts on certain materials that are now being entered into as being biodegradable, and there can be therefore a part of these legislations. I'm trying to sort of call back to some of the plastic-based conversations I've been in. But that seems, again, to be an education for people to understand really what this material is and what it means for it to be, again, home compostable, what it means to be, I don't know what the organic part of that maybe is. That just the organic certification, is that actually like that it needs to be organic from some sort of certified entity, or is this just like an organic compound? What's the organic nature of that? Am I way off
It's
here?
a very archaic definition. It's just like plant or animal matter.
Oh, it is just literally an organic. Oh, got it. Okay, so this isn't like organic certified in any sort of context of when it
It's
comes
for
to
organic products, but it's the definition of what makes it organic is, outdated.
Got it.
Yeah, but what I would say is there's a lot of competing desires related to how recycling works and the cleanliness and, I guess, quality of recycled goods. There's a lot of opportunity within composting that isn't necessarily supported because there's a lack of infrastructure for the most part. And both of them need to improve in order for us to deal with the waste crisis that we're confronted with. Because despite consumer trends and despite the buy-in from all these plastic manufacturers, and despite so much change happening and so much awareness, plastic production is still going to increase. So we need better functioning recycling systems. And at the same time, we need to reduce as much material usage as possible. And where it's still necessary, I would argue that it's great to invest in biologically circular materials that don't add to this mass of plastic that's just building up and doesn't have anywhere to go. The reality is that the volume of plastic that we have to deal with may never be dealt with because the infrastructure literally is not there and won't be.
Yeah, it
So
doesn't exist.
you need diverse solutions and they can work in harmony together, but it will be a challenge.
Yeah.
I think this might be a long-winded way to end up at the question I'm going to ask, but I think what's interesting about composting in the United States or even the recycling conversation is that because there's no centralized prescription of how we're going to do this as a society, and there isn't centralized investment, again, how we're going to do this as a society, we chip away at the problem and privately and without the government's help, in some cases municipalities, but not, again, centrally. So then private and public interplay a lot to chip away at the problem. And that kind of leads to what you were saying, Gar, is like that war of solutions is that, somebody has an idea over here because they see a slice of the problem. They want to solve that slice. Somebody over here sees a slice of the problem. They want to solve. And then like we're adding up and the sum gets us somewhere, but it's not really holistic. And so
The patchwork.
there's a weird way to ask the question, I guess, now is, do you see in any other country more successful adoption of marine-based or bioplastics where they have the infrastructure to process and therefore like societal buy-in? And like, is there a model, a country-based or multi-city based or region-based model out there that you're like, if we did it like that, it would work. Or, we should head in that direction. Or is it still just like hodgepodgey all over the world?
No, I think it's fair to say there are great country-based examples where there's probably a greater, well, smaller demographic as well as a more unified cultural mindset towards waste or the materials that we consume every day and where they should go. Italy deals with composting really well. And there's just a cultural mindset or attitude, as far as I've heard and read about, that allows for compostable materials to be introduced more successfully and for composting in general to be more successful. And I think it's entirely possible for that to happen in the United States as well. But I don't think that I think that it's important to be careful with how you market the role of compostable materials because it shouldn't be that they're solving all the problems. And I totally agree with both of you that it feels so like state by state. We need these solutions all converging, and that may be a totally different system of solutions as compared with something that's happening on the other side of the coast. Yeah, I think it's going to take 20, 30 years to iron out, but I also view composting behavior as becoming more accessible and also giant brands making more thoughtful decisions about how they deploy compostable versus recyclable versus reusable solutions across their SKUs. And hopefully we make it easy for the end user to do the right thing. So something that Sway is really focused on right now is, yes, we design bio-based compostable products. Can we look at ways to further functionalize fiber-based products? Like, what are the shortcomings of the paper-based solutions? And how can we enable them to perform better so that you have ideally a product that is both compostable and curbside recyclable? And then you provide like as many options for the end user as possible so that you increase the likelihood that they do the right thing. Or you have a really flashy message about the compostable product and you have a store drop off and you make it really easy for them to do the right thing. That's kind of where our head's at right now as we wait on more unity across the entire nation.
Well, yeah, and I hope all of that in the same lovely, Sabir, I don't remember the term you use, but I'll just go with hippie chic type of design that makes me feel really good to look at what you all are doing. When it comes to, just to switch gears then, I love the jobs aspect of what aquaculture could mean for marine-based economies. Can you talk a little bit about how you balance, again, this is another balancing question of how do you all go to support that and learn from those networks and almost share those stories as well in your advocacy for these solutions, because that's so critical. And really what we're trying to build more of in these sort of circular economy solutions is point to the part of sustainability that no one disagrees with, which is this could be a revolution towards some real opportunities for people.
Yeah, thank you for asking that piece because it's the reason we started the company was to support this investment into oceans and the blue economy where there are a tremendous number of coastline communities who are being impacted by the effects of overfishing and warming water, and we need to look at other sources of income. Seaweed farming is not as straightforward as I think it is generally made out to be. I've probably oversimplified it as well.
Can you elaborate on that?
I highly recommend that both of you go and visit a seaweed farm. Like in theory, it's so simple. Beautiful ocean, all the same equipment that you need to do normal fishing, rope, buoys, knife. Like it all sounds so simple. But the ocean's also a really dynamic environment and storms are a thing and you can't always control the nutrients in the water. And there are all these variables. So as I talk about the opportunity of seaweed farming, I don't mean to oversimplify it. However, the World Bank estimates that there is something like 100. This is a Google moment.
Yes, here come the fingers.
Something like.
No, don't you do it. Sabira, you can keep talking, Julia. Sabira's got it.
Well, I need to remember. It's World Bank jobs. I think it's let me find it. Hold on.
So this is what I've been Googling around lately while you all are looking for this. I've been obsessed with Lake Michigan, where I'm based in Chicago. Lake Michigan aquaculture? How do we get some type of jobs structured in the lake-based freshwater blue economy? And it is hard. Like, it is really hard to do that. And mostly, and what I got stuck in, this was a while ago now, but it was just how the US and Canada just disagree on so much when it comes to how to deal with certain, I mean, we just have different strategies. And because we share these waters, and it's specifically two countries disagreeing with how to sort of maybe set up some opportunities, that stuff just is slow to be adopted. So that's my segue into say what I'm passionate about. Now we get to back into the World Bank numbers.
The World Bank estimates that investment into seaweed aquaculture could create as many as 50 million direct jobs and 50
Very
million
cool.
indirect jobs. So there are possibly 100 million jobs associated with seaweed farming alone. Like, the opportunity is immense. Again, we live on a blue planet. Not suggesting seaweed farming is easy by any means, but
Right.
it is accessible to a lot of people, and it represents an enormous economic opportunity. So as we've been building our supply chain, we've been really thoughtful about the regions that we source from, the type of seaweed that we work with, and then as much as possible, we like to have a relationship with the farmers themselves in addition to the processors. And we're fairly selective about how we work with or who we work with in our sourcing relationships.
Quick double click on that, Sabira, real quickly. What are the properties you're looking for? Like, what's good seaweed? Like, what's good seaweed for packaging?
We like a particular gel strength. We like consistency. But actually, seaweed in packaging is a lot more forgiving than the industry's seaweed is currently optimized for. So right now, the underwater seaweed industry that no one's talking about, the same gelling compounds that are extracted and processed for use in food and pharmaceuticals and beauty products, super pure product. It looks like white powder. We don't need that to make biomaterials. So there's a great opportunity for us to partner closely with farms to develop new grades, more efficient grades, higher yield grades of seaweed extracts specifically designed for this new category of biopolymer or new category of packaging.
Would have never known.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I guess I mean, I've just been incredibly impressed with you, Julia, I think throughout this conversation, even when we met at Circularity. And I think as we start to get towards the end of our time together, one question I have for you, like, you're a young entrepreneur. You have obviously a breadth and depth of knowledge of seaweed and the market. And I think I'm just curious, like, how how did you like come to be so confident and like be a leader in this space? Like, I think that it's like a hard thing to do as a young person. And so I'm curious, like, what has given you the like, I'm gonna do this bug and chase it forever confidence?
That's very kind. I'm waiting for everyone to find out that I'm just three raccoons in a trench coat. So yeah.
Yeah.
It's wonderful that you perceive confidence. Lots of reasons that we have gotten this far. I am glad I did not know how complicated and unforgiving building any startup, but in particular a material startup. I'm glad I didn't know how hard that was when we got started.
What a theme in sort of our industries. When we talk to some of these leaders, we're all, it's incredible.
But what definitely keeps me motivated is the mission and this vision of not just our solution, but all of our peers being successful and planting the seeds for a future I really do believe in, which is one where we are dramatically reducing the amount of waste that we create and then investing in nature-based solutions. Like, that's just inevitable. I'm incredibly grounded by my co-founder, Matt, who's also my life partner. We work and live together. So when one of us is feeling demotivated, the other one takes a turn being the cheerleader and vice versa. So I'm really grateful for that. And then I'm super inspired by the next generation. Like, the emails and meetings that I get to have with college, high school, middle school, elementary schoolers is so motivating because, man, like the future is bright if they all go after it and get it done. So I have to keep going and be successful and manifest this thing so that they do too. I think that's the biggest piece.
I love that.
So then what's really our biggest barrier here? Like, I mean, is this coming down to, I mean, I know this is complex, it's systemic, but like if we could get a couple things right and we could in the next, maybe not 4 years, maybe there's some federal barriers here on the US side, but like what do you say is like, what could we be doing as consumers? What could we be asking for? What could we be advocating for? What should I be trying to do in my household to try to get more of these solutions available in the packaging that I'm bringing into my house?
As individuals who work at companies that make big decisions, I think it's important that we advocate if we are not the decision makers, that those who are decision makers within the organizations we work for every day are making smarter choices around their footprint as a whole, including packaging. I think that has the most opportunity for impact as an individual.
What I'm hearing in that is again another theme of which, if you're listening to this, you've seen Sway, you've interacted with these ideas and these concepts, raise your hand. And similarly, Sabira, I think there's a confidence. Julia, I love the confidence you bring to this, again, to this material, to this advocacy, but there's a confidence sometimes that not all of us have at every moment. And when you hear about some of these solutions, I think to your point that you just made, it's raise your hand. Don't be afraid to be like, have we thought about this? And just loft it out to your colleagues. Hopefully you're in a place that trusts you. Hopefully you're in a place that values your opinion. These are the moments, and I think you're right. These are the moments where we get to go, hey, I read about this thing or I saw this solution. Can we try this? And maybe it won't work, but have the confidence to bring that to your decision makers, bring that to your committee, whatever that might be. I think I love where you took that answer.
Yeah, that's a lovely synthesis, Gar. I think being aware of the solutions, like how we started this conversation, shifting your mindset from what we're fighting against and towards what we're fighting for, and then having a depth of knowledge or maybe just an index of solutions. Being aware of them allows you to advocate for them. And then it's really easy, as you say, to raise your hand and say, we should sign up for Ridwell. Why doesn't our office, or like, why are we not a member of 1% for the planet? Can we be? That seems like an easy thing to do. And then that change at the company scale is so much larger than probably what you might do at home. Although everyone should sign up for Ridwell. And anyone can be a 1% for the planet member. Even your dentist can be a 1% for the planet member.
Oh, I didn't know that.
There we go. And Ridwell, add it to our list of, again, we need to send out some more invites out to people
Is
and try to
this
get Ridwell on
podcast
here.
a 1% for the planet member?
You know what?
No.
It's not. And maybe that's how we need to think about this differently as well. Yes.
That's my impact on this
Yes.
conversation.
Good job.
We have
Sign up
homework
for
to do. Yeah.
be 1% for the planet member.
Well, Julia, as we conclude our time together, what do you want the audience to kind of look out for from Sway? What's coming up that you're excited about or proud of?
We have bags with handles now, guys. So
yes, innovation.
Hey, big wins. Those are good.
And
yeah.
they're coming in more and more sizes. We're looking at solving e-commerce packaging as well as retail packaging. If you don't need our materials, please don't buy them. But if you do really, really need packaging for either garments or loose objects, or if you need bags with handles to carry things, they're reusable, they're compostable, they're fairly durable. They're made with seaweed.
Love that.
And they're available to anybody.
Check out
Excellent.
Sway because you will feel, I felt swayed. Check it out. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Julia.
Kiss.